Hey friend, I got a secret to share with you. Namely, the two most important poi tricks that I ever learned in my entire career. And they're probably not what you think they are. Drix here from Drix Factor Poi, bringing you the love of poi spinning and flow arts, and today I am showing you what I think the two most important poi tricks I ever learned were. And we'll see if they turn out to be important poi tricks for you too. Before we dive in, I just want to give a quick shout out to the friends of the channel. Big thanks to Dark Monk, Flowfest, Flow Toys, Pyroterra Light Toys, LMF Props, Spinballs, and Ultrapoi for helping to make the videos on this channel possible. You can learn more about all these amazing companies and the work that they're doing to support flow artists like yourself by checking out the links that I've got down in the description of this video. So it's been made rather painfully clear to me on multiple occasions that I have forgotten more poi than I think a lot of people ever learn. And in sorting through all of that stuff that I've kind of processed over the years and everything, there are two things that jump out to me that were, quite frankly, the most useful tools that I ever acquired as a poi spinner. And now I'd kind of like to share that secret with you, because it's kind of only been by the benefit of hindsight that I've looked back and was like, wait, yeah, that was a really important moment, wasn't it? So, a drum roll please. Those two tricks are linear extensions and linear isolations. Wait, what? Not weaves, not gunslingers, not flowers, not any of that stuff? No, but learning these things did help me out with those other tricks and gave me so much more besides. So let me walk you through both of these and connect some dots here so that you can understand as well as I do just how incredibly powerful these two tools actually are. So first up, let me drop some definitions on you because it's going to be helpful to understand how all these pieces fit together. First and foremost, both of these are based around moving your hand back and forth in a straight line. That could be a horizontal line, it could be a diagonal line, it could be a vertical line, doesn't really matter. So let's start off by taking literally the simplest path of the poi that we can possibly take around that straight line. And that'll give us a linear extension. Basically, this is based around the idea that I'm going to perform a single beat rotation of the poi for every repetition that the hand does of that linear path. Alternately, I can also make that path just a little bit more complicated by adding an extra beat with the poi each time I move along a segment. This gives me a linear isolation. And you'll note there's now this moment as I'm going back and forth along that segment where I'm basically isolating the poi in space and my hand is moving past it. I can do this along a vertical line or I can do it along a horizontal line, whatever I so choose. It's also worth noting that unlike the linear extension, what I'm doing right now is actually a 3-beat rather than a single beat move. So one of the most useful things that I got out of linear extensions, especially at first, was the ability to put together anti-spin flowers. That is, one of the ways you can think about anti-spin flowers is you can kind of abstract them down in such a way that the petals become corners of a polygon. Let me show you what I mean. So, for example, if I want to work on a box mode 4-petal anti-spin flower, I can just think of there being 4 points that I want to move my hand back and forth along, right? Now the trick becomes I want to make sure that the poi is always going towards the inside of my body every time I move along one of those segments. That way when I get to one of the corners, I have a petal that kind of pops out. And what do you know? I get a 4-petal box mode anti-spin flower out of that. You can also come up with more complicated patterns if you like too. For example, I could make a pentagon by simply moving my hand along 5 points and turning each segment in between those 5 points into its own linear extension. You can also use this for putting together star polygons, like say a pentagram. Once again, I just turn each segment of a pentagram that is each line into its own linear extension. And what do you know? I get an anti-spin version of that pattern coming out. I also like to use this technique for learning polyrhythm hybrids, and specifically it is through using linear extensions that I first learned how to do the Mercedes. This is a technique that I actually used for teaching it on my Instagram just a few weeks ago, and it basically boils down to thinking of each segment in itself as being linear extensions with the poi spinning in opposite directions along each segment, right? So after you practice each of those individual 3 segments, you can practice going back and forth along a pair of them. Once that gets to feel pretty natural, you can just go straight along the entire length of it, and what do you know? All of a sudden it stops feeling like individual segments and it starts to feel like that awesome hybrid that we all know and love. And of course, the ultimate extension of this idea, pun intended, is to use linear extensions to learn third-order motions, such as Zand's diamond. So, for example, with Zand's diamond, one of the ways that we can think of it, of course, is as being an anti-spin, if we're thinking of it in third-order motion land. The other way we can think of it is as essentially being an octagram, that we are moving our hand along in such a way that the poi always seems to be moving in anti-spin, right? Now, I've actually done an entire series of videos showing you how you can take linear extensions from putting together basic patterns with them all the way up to being able to do third-order motions and polyrhythm hybrids and all of that good stuff that I will go ahead and link to down in the description. And of course, another great use for these linear extensions is as a tool for learning body tracers. Let me show you what I mean. So we've already talked about how you can use your linear extensions to put together something like a 4-petal box mode anti-spin flower, right? Okay, now in order to turn this into a body tracer, basically we have to have one or more of these segments that switches which side of our body it happens to be on. So let's say for the sake of argument that I turn the top segment into that piece that puts a beat behind me and everything. Now, fundamentally, I'm still creating the same flower that I was before, I'm just switching which side of my body it happens to be on. I'm still creating that flower out of 4 segments. I could alternately stick that segment over on the left-hand side here, like so. Once again, I'm creating a great body tracer out of it, and I'm doing so in such a way that all I'm really doing is choosing which segment I want to stick behind my body. I can't really do it on the bottom because that would involve my hand having to move through my torso, but I can do it on the right-hand side. So, for example, I can take it up the right, like so. And in that way, you can put together some really awesome familiar body tracers, like, say, the Nevisol, which involves taking the poi up along the body in a box mode 4-petal anti-spin flower, as well as a 2-petal in-spin flower. Cool, so clearly linear extensions are an amazing tool for being able to put together a variety of flower-based wall plane tricks and everything. But what about linear extensions? What are they good for? So first up, I will tell you that there's a considerable amount of overlap between the two. You'd be surprised how often you can create the same shape depending upon whether you want to come at it from an extension or isolation kind of place, but the methods that you have to use in order to learn those tricks wind up being substantially different depending upon which lens you're looking at them through. So one of my favorite examples, I think that linear isolations are one of the best ways to teach people how to do diamond mode anti-spin flowers, which of course is the version of 4-petal anti-spin flowers that we use the most. The reason for this is that you can kind of take this moment where we're going back and forth across a horizontal line here, and think of that moment when the poi pops up or drops down as being those moments when you want the hand to go up or go down. So, for example, hand goes up, hand goes down, hand goes up, hand goes down. And look at that, I'm now doing that diamond mode 4-petal anti-spin flower. And of course, this also winds up being a really useful tool for discovering something about how flowers are composed. Now, you'll note that when I went ahead and turned this into a 4-petal anti-spin flower, the way I did it was to say, okay, when the poi's going up, your hand goes up. And when the poi goes down, your hand goes down. And that gets us to that 4-petal anti-spin flower place, right? Well, what if I reverse those rules and say instead that when the poi goes down, your hand is going to go up, and when the poi goes up, your hand goes down? Well, look at that. Now I'm doing a 2-petal in-spin flower. What's going on here? Well, as it turns out, our linear isolations are really both a 4-petal anti-spin and a 2-petal in-spin flower that have been collapsed down to just having the hand move back and forth in a straight line. Now, right here, this cannot be either in-spin or anti-spin because it can't be moving either opposite or the same direction as the hand, because the hand is not actually moving around in a circle. It's only when the hand starts moving up and down that we can tell for certain whether we're working with anti-spin or in-spin. This is a really important lesson because it also shows us that geometrically a 4-petal anti-spin and a 2-petal in-spin are kind of inverses of each other. That is, a 2-petal in-spin flower is kind of a 4-petal anti-spin flower that's been turned inside out. And of course, linear isolations, I feel like, are kind of the cheat code for getting down most body tracers. So as one example, let's talk about snakes, and specifically snakes across a horizontal plane here. Snakes on a plane, perhaps? Sorry, couldn't resist. Anyway, moving on. If we take our linear isolation that we started this whole discussion with and make a slight tweak to it, we're going to see a trick that you know and love emerging. That is, if I take that moment when the poi is poking up or dropping down as I go back and forth across the segment and put that back behind my shoulder going both ways, huzzah! I have that snake. From there, you can actually get both of your hands involved, and now we have that really, really beautiful split time same direction snake in wall plane coming out of it. Alternately, we could have our hand moving back and forth along a vertical axis instead of a horizontal axis. And what we get out of that turns out to be the recipe for getting a vertical snake down. That is, we can move those same points where we have the poi poking out to either side to being around under our shoulder and over our shoulder, like so. Now, you can do this either with one hand at a time, or you can do the thing where the poi separate out to each side afterwards, which I think this is also a trick that G is really famous for, and it is one of the more famous body tracers out there too. So flowers, hybrids, and body tracers, that kind of seems like the lifeblood of the linear isolation, but no, we have one more stop to make here. And bear in mind, this is easily the weirdest spot that I have seen a linear isolation pop up, but bear with me here. How many of y'all have learned how to do your basic turns with your meteor that is one-hand weaves, yeah? Well, if you go back and forth between your 2-beat reverse and your 2-beat forward, that is your thumb lead to your pinky lead, your thumb lead to your pinky lead, guess what? That is a linear isolation that you're using right in the middle in order to switch up which end is leading. That is, I'm using a linear isolation to switch from thumb end to pinky end and from pinky end to thumb end. Thumb end does a linear isolation, pinky end does a linear isolation, going back and forth. Of course, once I understood how to turn this trick into a meteor flower, like so, all of a sudden it made sense to me, because again, it's that thing where we can use a linear isolation to create flower petals, top and bottom. The missing piece of the puzzle was just realizing that we can do that same move with a meteor. How about that? So the final thing I'll give you with linear isolations is just that they also make for a great embellishment with a lot of different wall plane flowers. So for example, you've probably seen me do this move right here, which is literally just taking linear isolations and pairing them together in split time same direction and using them to kind of create this nice little isolated space in the middle here. In addition, we can also take some anti-spin flowers and add a linear isolation going through the middle, which, you know, once again creates that nice isolated space that we can either space out with a poise length apart to really enforce that isolated feel, or we can put our hands together going through the middle, in which case we still get a nice kind of moment where the poi just hang out in space there for a second, but at the same time it is in a hands together kind of place, so it makes for a good transition into a different timing and direction, for example. Wow, friends, so we have gone through a magical mystery tour of different poi tricks here, and I think it's kind of awesome that this wide variety of different poi tricks all have this one thing in common, that they can all be built out of these two tricks that just involve the hand moving back and forth along a straight line and figuring out what kind of embellishment you want the poi to have around that. I definitely look back on learning both linear extensions and linear isolations as being one of the formative experiences in turning me into the poi spinner that I am today. And you know what? I really hope that this winds up being a similar experience for all of you all out there. So go drill those linear extensions and isolations and see what that opens up into your world, yeah? I can't wait to see it. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe so that other people can find this video and learn from it. And of course, a huge thank you, because this video would not be possible without the kind contributions of these amazing folks right here. These are my supporters on Patreon, and they make this video and all the videos on this channel possible. If you would like to sign up to support the work that I do, which I would really appreciate, but no judgment either way, you can do so by heading on over to patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi and signing up. There you can get early access to all of my content, as well as a say in what topics I tackle in the future, plus some great extras and occasional behind-the-scenes content too. So you should go check that out. Please and thank you. What were some of the most important tricks that you learned in your poi journey? What were some of the things that set you up for success later on, or made it easier for you to break down more complicated tricks? I would love to find out. Let me know with a comment down below, and you never know, you might jog something loose for me and I'll realize that there's another trick that I should have covered and didn't put in this here video. But either which way, thank you all so much for watching, and have yourselves a good one. I will be back on Friday with another poi combo for you all, and I can't wait to see you then. Thanks for watching, and peace.